All right, it's 4:01, everyone. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome. I am thrilled to see all of you here. This is our final session of the From Vision to Vitality webinar series. I'm Katie Tolley. I've been here for all of them. You guys probably recognize Sean Cross. I'm our Director of Advancement and Marketing. And again, I just want to begin by saying how grateful we are that all of you are here. Whether you've been with us from our very first session or just joining us for the first time today, we're thrilled to see you here. So over the last couple of months, we've walked together through everything from assessing community need to licensing and legislation, Medicaid partnerships, to building a model of care that really heals both the infant and the parent. So we are just humbled by the passion and the commitment and collaboration that we've witnessed across this amazing group of people. Today's session is all about where we are, where we're headed, and how all of you are shaping the movement that is beginning to grow across the country. We've also had some really major announcements that we are excited to share with you, important legislative updates, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions toward the end. Before we dive into that, just a quick reminder, today's session is going to run about an hour and a half, and then we'll dedicate the final 20 to 30 minutes to Q&A. So if you are joining us, if you're live here with us, I love seeing where everybody is joining us from. So go ahead and utilize the chat for that. If you'll just drop us a note and let us know where you're joining us from. And then the Q&A feature, if you have a question directly for me or for Sean or for someone else on our team, please utilize that Q&A feature. Carly is our communications coordinator. She's going to be watching both the chat and the Q&A so we don't miss anything. And then this session, just like all the others, is recorded, and we'll be sure to upload a copy of this and any of our slides to our website so that you've got access to them. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. Sean, it's all you.
Hey, thank you, Katie. So again, my name is Sean Cross. I'm the president and CEO of Maddie's Place. And I think as most of you know, all of this started with a very small clinic here in Spokane, Washington, the first pediatric transitional care facility in Washington State, focusing on the dyad, on both the baby and the mom. And what we've seen over the past 3 years, and especially over the course of this webinar series, I think the first one was August 11th. But what we've seen over the past several months is the need that we've heard from so many of you that this model really needs to extend far beyond just one city or one region or even one state. And we've been able, through this webinar series, this is the sixth and final one, to connect with 265 attendees from 43 states and multiple countries. Many of you have joined one of what are now 36 cohorts around the country. Many of you have held meetings, shared expertise, and begun building early pathways in your own communities. And so we're super excited to see what we're seeing. We had no idea when we started this that we'd get this kind of response. We did this series because we also all of a sudden went from 140,000 followers on our social media platforms to 300, and I think we're up to over 390,000 now. But once we saw that double and all the emails coming in and contacts coming in to start at Maddie's Place, really since April is when we saw this kind of growing movement. And I think really, something is happening that we never really imagined when we opened this in 2022, and that's that this is no longer a local model, but I think, and I say this very humbly, but I think we have the opportunity for this to become a national model and a national movement that could have far-reaching impact on many, many thousands of infants and parents around the country. So we're excited to take a snapshot of kind of what's happened just over the past month or so. Some of this we could have announced probably at the last webinar, but we had a few more agreements to finalize and things to do. So basically, I want to start off with the fact that we have we've been looking at the cohorts and kind of what are next steps and where are the superclusters, I'll call them, and looking at different factors. But the ones that we've been focused on initially is we have formed two subsidiaries of Maddie's Place Florida LLC and Maddie's Place Vancouver LLC. Um, and so in the first case with Maddie's Place Florida, I've been dealing with two wonderful women in Florida, Dr. Juliana Hellman and Nicole Baird, for a year and a half, going on 2 years, I think, soon. And then also we have Nanette Serlo, who's the founder of Generation O, which is also playing a huge role nationally in providing resources and educational materials and hopefully political support too for the families that adopt and foster these precious infants. So that all we've done is just incorporated that entity. It's a Washington State corporation. We'll get a separate employment identification number when we are at a point where we're doing business. Obviously, we'll comply with all Florida law, but we haven't begun to fundraise or do anything on that. But it is ready to start a fundraising when the time is right for the cohort in Florida. So no rush, but we're ready to go when they are. In addition, just in September, my board gave me approval to form a subsidiary with the Oregon cohort. And so that, fortunately, one of the benefits of being a partner in a law firm is they're providing all these services for free, which I really appreciate. Lee and Hayes, which is based in Spokane. We've got 7 offices around the country, but we're based in Spokane, and they've been doing all of this corporate work for me for free, which I really appreciate. But we formed in October Maddie's Place Vancouver LLC, and we're looking at the Portland metro region. And for those of you who don't know, Vancouver is really a suburb of Portland that happens to be on the north side of the Columbia River, which divides the state of Washington and the state of Oregon. And the group we all agreed that this would be a good starting point because we have reason to believe, and we'll get into this later with announcements, that the Washington State Legislature may be poised to amend their state Medicaid plan to provide a permanent funding model for pediatric transitional care facilities in the state of Washington. And so that would provide our operating funding for not only Maddie's Place here in Spokane, but for any Maddie's Place that we form on the west side of the state, starting with Vancouver. And we also know there's just a massive need in the Portland metro region with the crisis that they've been facing for the last several years. So we're very excited about that. And we have, as a part of that process, we've signed agreements between Maddie's Place as the parent corporation and Maddie's Place Vancouver LLC, which is the subsidiary affiliate, an intercompany agreement, and then also an operating agreement. And we have 3 managers out of a group of about 12 who are in the cohort in Oregon that have agreed to serve as managers. Dr. Marvin Seppala, who's nationally known as one of the leading experts on the psychiatry of addiction, was trained at the Mayo Clinic and was the chief medical officer for Hazelton Betty Ford's 30 clinics or whatever they have for 30 years, and retired a couple years ago and lives in the Portland area. So now we basically have the template, if you will, the legal structure for how this will work. And that's licensing our trademarked Maddie's Place name and logo. And then also our leadership team will then provide oversight for that facility. The next step is for us to begin raising money in the Portland area, which we'll start to do after the first of the year. So I see Julie Davis is on here. I know her daughter Heather is probably on here, and so we have a great group in Oregon that are going to do this. They're both NIC unit RNs that have a passion for these babies and families, and so they'll be some of our first employees. We just got to raise some money and get this thing going. So that's big news that we're starting to form subsidiaries. One other thing I wanted to mention, which is really incredible. One of the most important organizations in our journey is Coordinated Care. Coordinated Care is a Medicaid payer, one of about five in the state of Washington. They don't have a large share of the Medicaid market, about 4 or 5%. But where they are extremely relevant to what we're about is they are the sole payer for the foster care system here in the state of Washington. They cover 100% of the expenses of our foster care system. And very early on, several years ago, we met with one of their a really special woman named Stacy West at Coordinated Care, and she has just been a passionate supporter of ours, and she is one of the leaders of Coordinated Care. And so, because of that relationship, they actually contracted with us to get us off the ground and pay us on a per diem basis when we opened in October 2022. And then when the state took the position that was they couldn't do that because we weren't expressly covered under Medicaid under the state plan, they continued to fund us to the total of $1.1 million, which kept our doors open in 2022 until our state pilot kicked in September of 2023. So what is exciting about this is the reason that they did this, their leadership recognized the significance of what we were doing with the dyad, with the infant and the parent. And by keeping the infant with the biological parent, they realized that Maddie's model was diverting infants who otherwise would probably have gone into foster care. And so they see this as a paradigm shift in not having all of these infants go into foster care. Foster care serves an incredibly important purpose, but if we can keep a percentage of these infants with their biological parents, we feel that's really good for the baby, and then also obviously for the biological parent. But the exciting news is this: we've been advised recently that Coordinated Care's parent company has other subsidiaries in other states where it is the sole payer for the foster care system in that state. And those states are, drum roll, Texas, Oklahoma, Illinois, Florida, and Missouri. So in those states, the Coordinated Care affiliate is the sole payer for the entire state's foster care system, the same as our situation was here in Washington. So this past week, I was asked to meet with Coordinated Care's leadership, and I believe some of the others around the country. And that meeting is being set up in the very near future to discuss what Maddie's Place is doing and what we're seeing nationally because of these webinars, and that we believe that where Coordinated Care's affiliates are the sole foster care payer, we will have a leg up in those states. We have at least 10 individuals in the cohorts in Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma. So those are states that I'm very interested in possibly starting a Maddie's Place. And even if people in those states want to be independent and just do something similar to Maddie's Place, but want to be faith-based or want to do things a little bit differently, we'll still help you in any way that we can to coordinate, no pun intended, with Coordinated Care. So I just think that's a huge deal that could really help. I think that's going to provide funding. I think for those in those states, and so anyway, I'll be getting out information to particularly the cohorts in those states as soon as I get the meet with the leadership and find out, if they're receptive to financially supporting like similar clinics to Maddie's Place in other states. So that's really, starting to form subsidiaries, starting to have these contacts on what is going on, is really, really, really exciting for us. And then I think, Katie, I think we can probably go to, I guess it is slide 6 that has the Guardian article. I don't know if you're aware, but on November 20th was a huge day for us as an organization because two things happened that day. Very early in the morning, I was advised by Ann Newman, who is the journalist who penned the Guardian article, that it had been published early that morning. That article, it's about a 6,000 word article. I can't believe the resources that the Guardian put into that. They Ann Newman is a nationally recognized journalist. She writes for the New York Times, in addition to the Guardian, Harper's, and I think the New Yorker. She's written books. She's very, very well known. But she spent 3 days. She contacted us in July, spent 3 days with us in August, and then they had a photographer from Ohio that came out for 4 days in October. So the resources they put into this article are incredible. And the focus is on Stephanie Roselle, who's one of our first moms, who's now a full-time employee at Maddie's Place, and one of several of our former alumni that we've hired as part of our peer support team. So was there going to be a slide on that, Katie?
Oh, the Guardian article, are you not able to see it?
No, but as long as others can, that's okay.
I dropped it in the chat as well.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason I'm not seeing, but as long as others can see it, that's okay. So that was big news. And then the other thing that happened that same day, and I think I'll jump probably to slide 10. I'll just might as well hit the federal. So if you can go to 10, and then we'll go back to 7 through 9 in a minute. So on the afternoon of November 20th, same day that Guardian article came out, a bill that I've been working on for about 3 years was introduced into the U.S. House of Representatives by three congressmen. Dan Newhouse, a Republican of the 4th Congressional District in Washington, Mike Baumgartner, who's a Republican congressman from the 5th Congressional District, which is where I'm located, where Maddie's Place is located. And then the bipartisan Democratic sponsor was Kim Schreier of I believe the 10th Congressional District, which overlaps the Cascades but goes on to the west side. So it's a bipartisan co-sponsors that we have, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. It's interesting with Kim Schreier, she's a pediatrician. So the press release that they jointly got out, maybe we can get that out to everybody, Katie, but it was really remarkable what those 3 said about what we're doing here. And so we have a federal lobbyist. We use a firm called Capital Path, which is main partners are John Colton and Kyla Blair. They were on our last webinar, the 5th webinar, in case you happen to catch that one. But John is working on the federal side, and we are working to get original co-sponsors in the Senate. And so we've gotten positive word from Senator Murray's office and from Senator Cantwell's office. And then they're Democrats, obviously. On the Republican side, we're looking at Senator Murkowski, and then also we're looking at the senators in Ohio. So that work is actually happening this week. So I hope that we'll have some more announcements on the Senate co-sponsors. Once that happens, then we'll be coordinating with some of you with political connections. I know we've been talking to Dee Dee down in Birmingham, Alabama, who did work on the Hill, and she's part of a cohort that they're calling their Maddie's Place Bridged Beginnings, and they have a real powerhouse group of about 10 in Birmingham, Alabama. But I know that Dee Dee has a lot of political connections We know that Jill Kingston, who's the founder of Bridget's Path in Dayton, Ohio, has a lot of connections. And so really we're seeing kind of national recognition of neonatal abstinence syndrome and a dyadic care model. And I think there's going to be further opportunities for federal grants and pilot funding. So I think as we raise awareness and get this federal legislation going, that's going to benefit what we're all doing in whatever state we're in. Because again, the purpose of the Miracle Act is to obtain data on the prevalence of neonatal abstinence syndrome in every state and every Indian tribe in the United States, and then to also study the outcomes at the 5 pediatric transitional care facilities that we're aware of in the country. It's going to be a 3-year study. It's going to take time, but this will really shine a spotlight on how bad this problem is. We don't have any federal data since 2020. And we've had a pandemic since then, and fentanyl has really hit since then, and we've had the polysubstance phenomenon that's really arisen over the last few years, at least here in Washington State. So on the state side, we are doing all sorts of things. So we have our state legislature does not meet throughout the year. We have what's called a long session in odd years, and that's 120 days. And we have what's called a short session, which is 60 days in even years. And so our next legislative session starts on Monday, January 12th, and it will run, unless the governor extends it, until Thursday, March 12th, so 60 days. So in preparation for that, we have been meeting with our state lobbyists, Kyla Blair, with everyone, all of the leaders in the state Senate and the Washington State House. We are focusing on basically 3 bills right now. One bill would provide technical amendments to the current statute that we have in this state, which is really was written for a center in Kent, Washington, that just treats the infants. It does not treat the dyad. It does not treat the parent. And while that is, a laudable goal, and they've done wonderful work, the woman who founded it has treated over 3,000 babies. I think what's really getting the attention of the policymakers, both state and federal, is the dyadic model, where we've seen that if the biological parent spends the entire time at our facility with their infant, which is about a 60-day length of stay, 88% of those parents are still today in recovery and in custody of that infant and housed. And so it's the combination of the benefits that I think are helping at this time, where there's a lot of budget problems in every state, where Medicaid is being cut back. All of those sorts of trends are going on. But given the severity of this drug crisis historically in the United States, and particularly with fentanyl, and with what we're seeing with these babies and with this model, I think we still can get that done. So we're trying to get our statute changed, which will be very significant. We're trying to get a what's called a budget proviso, which will be around $2 million or $2.25 million for the fiscal year starting July 1st of 2026. That'll provide about 42% of the support we need to run this facility, which is about a $4.5 million run rate with 95 paid staff right now. But with other funds that we get from the county, from the city, and from grants and from charitable donations, we should be fine if we get that $2 million from the state. And then what we're hoping is that a bill that's being drafted right now, we hope it'll be they're going to run it by us and send it to us next week. We'll amend the state Medicaid plan to expressly cover neonatal abstinence services provided by state licensed pediatric transitional care facilities. The federal match is there with the CRIB Act for the benefit of all of you in all 50 states. The problem has been only West Virginia and Ohio that we're aware of and have amended their state Medicaid plan to expressly do the match. And so by raising awareness through the Miracle Act, by getting the data out to all the states, we're hopeful that the states will look at their shoes and say, we're better than this as a society, and we need to provide Medicaid treatment for this dyadic model. So that's our kind of our state legislative push. We'll be dealing a lot with the Senate Ways and Means Committee, the House Appropriations Committee, the Senate Human Services Committee in Washington State, and the House Early Learning Committee. So I think that covers through slide 10.
And my apologies, Sean, I didn't realize, and apologies to all of you, I didn't realize I was looking at the slides. I had not actually shared them with all of you. So Sean, if you don't mind, I'm just going to
Yep.
flip back a slide or two.
No,
I
that's
really
fine.
would like
Yeah.
folks to take in the US map that we shared that you were talking about earlier, where our cohorts are located. So all of the dots that you guys are seeing on the map are where we have had folks tuning in from that have wanted, expressed interest in being part of this process, being connected with others in their region. The dots that you're seeing in red are where we've got our larger cohorts, where we're seeing, 8, 9, 10 or more people. California's got a little over 20 folks in that cohort. And then obviously the stars there in Florida and the Portland, Vancouver, Washington area are Maddie's Place subsidiaries. And then those green highlights that you're seeing are where coordinated care is the sole payer for the foster care system. So
Correct. Yeah,
just
that's
want to
really helpful. Yeah, that's
yeah,
really.
and I'm sorry, Claire had asked the question, would we mind sharing the slide deck? We absolutely will. I'll make that link public as soon as we're done here. I might be able to share it out even before our session ends today, but it will be up by tomorrow on our website, so you can flip through and follow along as well.
So we're open to working with all of you, but we have the wonderful problem of trying to prioritize this. And so if you're familiar with Venn diagrams and overlapping spheres and that, and where things are really aligned, we look at Oregon, and obviously that's geographically close. We look at Portland, that's obviously got a huge problem. And so we look at the fact that we can put a clinic across the river in Washington State, and that will provide, if the legislature amends our state Medicaid plan, then we can have operating funding for that clinic, even though it's in Portland metro area. So, and then we've got just a great group of people. And then the same thing, and then we've got large cohorts in Texas and in Oklahoma and also in Florida. And so now that we know that coordinated care has affiliates that are the sole payer, then you go, hey, wait a minute, we can introduce you to people, we can supercharge this a little bit. So that's a big deal, and that's going to be introductions, other MCOs, political clout, all sorts of stuff if they're the sole payer in Texas and in Oklahoma and in Florida. Now, we don't have the big red dots in Illinois and Missouri, but we're happy to look at that. I think one of the things that I'm looking for, and everybody's super busy, and we all have day jobs and other stuff in that. One of the metrics that I'm looking for okay, should we put a Maddie's Place somewhere, is how serious are people about doing this? So, for example, are they meeting? How often are they meeting? Have they chosen a chair? Have they started to gather data on NAS? I mean, in some of the earlier webinars, we've said, okay, this is what you need to do, and what you do. And so, we have to prioritize what we do. We want to help everybody, but we also don't want to just be a shotgun that just scattered shots everywhere, because we won't be effective. And so, that's one of the metrics that we're looking at. And we understand, you have day jobs, we understand, life and everything, and that's fine. But what, I'm looking for is folks that maybe they have some time now, or maybe, they can do this or whatever, or they want to step up and be the chair, or they're willing to, herd the cats in their state, kind of a thing, to get this thing going. So, and we're going to be looking for feedback from you. And maybe Katie, it can just be people, doing what they've done, which is information@maddiesplace.org, but let us know, if your cohort has met, who's in your cohort, or at least or meeting? Has you selected a chair? What have been generally, what have you accomplished? What are you thinking? Another thing is going to be, do you want to be affiliated with Maddie's Place? If you don't, that's fine. But if you do, then obviously that's something that I'm going to be more focused on. We have the ability to form these single member LLCs right out of Spokane for free. And so, there's benefits to being part of Maddie's Place, but there's also a purpose for having a faith-based organization, and we're secular. There's a purpose for having your own organization and doing your own thing, and we'll still come alongside and help you. Uh, you know, but we just need to know what do you want from us? What are you thinking? So feel free to reach out and do that. We're getting amazing emails. We've got a woman in Camano Island, which is in the San Juan Islands here in the state of Washington, that she and her husband apparently have some acreage, and they're talking about doing something out on Camano Island. And I mean, the stuff that people are thinking about and coming up with is really, really, really cool. But we don't know what you guys are thinking, so we need you to reach out and let us know what's going on with your cohort and in your region. So
And Sean, I'll just say before the end of the week, we will make sure, since this is our final webinar of this series, at least for now, I'm going to look at everybody that's participated across these 6 webinars, make sure that anybody that has registered and expressed interest in connecting with other people in their regions, that we do another email introduction to just make sure, everybody who's involved in the cohort, you have those email addresses and can maybe look to connect one another now that you've sat through this series. So be on the lookout before the end of the week for those. I guess the end of the week is tomorrow, so I'll do that tomorrow. And then I will also share, we've created a sort of a questionnaire or a conversation guide. If you're meeting for the first time or you're still very new, trying to get to know other folks in your cohort, it doesn't have to be so awkward. We've got some questions that, can help sort of prompt the conversation and get things started. And I'll also share that link to the questionnaire, the info form that Sean alluded to. Is just, we're really just looking, after you've met with your cohort, fill us in, let us know what you guys talked about, who's involved, how we can help get you started or encourage you along or provide more information, whatever that looks like for the rest of you. We want to be supportive and do what we can to help make sure that you guys potentially see services like this in your area too.
and again, this, if you haven't read this article, it's really, I think, important to read. And this is something I know that you'll all have sort of your packets as you meet with people and as you talk to people. This journalist is Ann Newman, is really, really good. And she spent an enormous amount of time on this article. This is journalism at its very, very best. And she touches on a lot of the struggle. She went to Bridget's Path. She went to in Dayton, Ohio. She went to Lily's Place in Huntington, West Virginia. She went to the Pediatric Interim Care Center, which is not a dyadic model, in Kent, Washington, near Seattle. I think it was a little bit too hot for her to go to Hushabye and Jacob's Hope, but she was in communication with them also. But it really explains the history of these organizations, the struggle of these organizations, the challenges, the public policy issues that are involved, and kind of what we're trying to do. So that should be, we got lots of information when it gets to that point for you to have in your packet when you're meeting with people and talking to people and starting to build support or to raise funds for your clinic. So I think Katie, do you want to, you had a question you wanted to ask me, I think, and then.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was typing in the chat. Apparently our Q&A feature isn't working. So feel free to just utilize the meeting chat if you guys do have questions. So Sean, as we sort of transition here, would love to talk a little bit about, we've talked about the legislation that we're working on. What do you see as the biggest policy window opening nationally right now? We just had the Miracle Act introduced.
Yeah, I think we have a real window of opportunity right here. There is the Support Act was just signed by the president this past month, overwhelming bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate. That bill was originally passed in 2018. It was an $8 billion opioid package, but it had a 5-year sunset on it. And so Congress sat on it in 2023 and 2024, but it passed in 2025. I think, the opioid crisis and the drug crisis in the United States, while we've seen some tailing off of the overdose deaths nationally, I think it's still very, very high on the national agenda. We see, it's become a national security thing, right? And whether people agree with what is currently being done with illegal trafficking and with boats coming in or with Venezuela or whatever, the point is that the opioid crisis is front and center with public policymakers at both the state and the federal level. The other thing is, depending on what state you're seeing, things are getting worse in Washington. We just may be slow or whatever. Our fentanyl, I think, may be hitting us sooner. We're a border state. We also have fairly lax enforcement laws. So Washington State is the third worst state for homelessness after New York and California. And so there are a lot of factors which are contributing to our situation, but our deaths are continuing to increase significantly. Our infant mortality from secondary exposure to fentanyl, we are losing dozens of children this year. This 2025 will be a record for the most toddlers that we've lost in the state of Washington due to secondary exposure to fentanyl in the home. And so I can tell you our legislature is very, very concerned and focused on this issue. The third thing is there's not a lot of light out there. I mean, there's a lot of darkness, but I would like to think that, we're one of those points of light where something is actually working. We're incredibly small and all that sort of stuff. But I do think that we're onto something. The other thing is, we have 390,000 followers on our social media platforms, and you people are fired up about this. We have Generation O that has 7,500 families that are participating in with Lynette, and we've just we're seeing in the U.S. House and in the Senate that we're getting traction and we're getting attention on the Miracle Act. So I think now's really the time to strike and to do this. And we know also this is not going to get better. We're going to be having more research on what the impact of fentanyl is with longitudinal studies on children's development and that. And fentanyl is a really evil, bad drug, and it's much, much stronger than anything that we've experienced before. So we know that as we get more research and as we have more studies done and people look at this, it's not like things are going to get better. And so I think we're in the middle of something that we could be a possible solution about. And there's strength in numbers, and we have a lot of numbers. Now, I know a lot of you have political connections. I mentioned, Dee Dee in Birmingham, Alabama. I, already introduced her to our federal consultant, a lobbyist, John Colton. And with any of you that have any direct or good connections with a U.S. senator or a U.S. representative, please let us know. Just at information@mattiesplace.org. We will create a group that you'll be a part of. We'll let you know when we're going to go to DC. We'll keep you informed on the legislation as it passes, when it gets introduced in the Senate, who the original co-sponsors are, when I'm going to DC, when John's going to DC, and what's going on. If you want to join us, we'd love to have you. The more the merrier as we walk up and down the halls of Congress. So we'll coordinate all of that with you if you want to be part of that. So yeah, I mean, I think I just think it's a unique opportunity right now, and I want to strike while the iron's hot.
Well, and we've talked a little bit about this before, Sean, but for communities and cohorts that are really just beginning this work, what's that first step in sort of building legislative credibility for them?
Well, I think starting to meet is the first thing, and seeing how many you have in your group and canvassing, skill set and backgrounds and seeing what the strength of your cohort is, seeing what state political connections you have, what federal political connections you have. I don't think if you don't have those that you should be discouraged. But the first thing is to have the group meet and find out. You may have you may have a group in Oklahoma that hasn't, I don't know, you guys may have met, but maybe a group in Oklahoma that hasn't met yet. And you may be thinking, oh, I don't have any political connections at all. But you don't know that there's a person in your group in Tulsa that has massive connections. And so until the groups really start to meet, you're not going to know what your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And we won't know that either. So I think meeting sounds simple, but I'm not sure how many of the cohorts have actually met. We've been trying to get information on that, and I don't get the impression a ton of the cohorts have met. And I get it, it's busy time in that, but that's going to be one of the indicators of how serious people are. If they don't meet, then they're probably not too serious. If they do meet, then somehow they're managing to fit this in as a priority. And if you're going to go forward, believe me, it'll have to be a priority. And I get it if it's not. I'm not criticizing that or judging that, but we're trying to measure where, help you get along with this. If you start to meet and you've got a chair and you've got regular meetings set up, we can provide you with tons of information. We can connect you with coordinated care if you're in one of those states. We can, we will update you with what we're doing with legislation. We'll provide toolkits and templates and legal documents for you. And my sense is that we're probably going to have follow-up webinars to this. We're happy to meet with you virtually on Teams or whatever, group by group, and kind of to assist you too, as we can work that into our schedules. And so this is a priority for me, and it's a priority for our organization to try to help as many folks as we can out there to start these clinics.
Thanks, Sean. Well, as you guys can see on the screen there, as this movement grows, and as Sean has talked about, Maddie's Place Spokane, we really want to continue to be a support for cohorts in as many ways as we have capacity for. So that may look like ongoing introductions for folks that are interested. Anybody that reaches out, as long as you give us permission to connect you via email, we're happy to do that with others that might be in your area. Connections to coordinated care, affiliate plans, like Sean was talking about. We can potentially help create toolkits or templates or, share legal documents, that kind of thing. So you're not having to start from scratch. Optional follow-up for webinars, or maybe we could look at hosting some virtual office hours, things like that. And then obviously a national network that we can potentially help connect you with as your efforts evolve. So just remember that you are not doing this alone, that we want to walk forward with you in this together. So I think, go ahead, Sean.
Well, I was just going to say on the fundraising side too. I mean, if there's any, we can provide the packets of information that give the background information, not about your unique situation. You're going to want to know, start to learn how bad is NASS to the extent you can find out in your individual communities and states. You're going to want to have some of that research done and just, be looking at that. But there's a lot of information that we can provide you. So your brochure or packets, you've got that when you start to meet with potential donors. And, I mean, I got to be careful and how far I stretch myself on this, but if you get a group of donors or whatever to donate to your organization, I'm happy to be part of that presentation, and do that. So you don't have to do that alone either.
Fantastic. Well, that's sort of the bulk of our presentation here. I've seen a couple of questions filter in, so we're going to move on to Q&A. If that Q&A feature is not working, feel free to just utilize the meeting chat here. So I think I've backed up. Claire had a couple of questions. Curious about what type of space is needed to open a Maddie's Place. What's the cost it takes to run that space? And then how are people eligible or referred for the services? So it's sort of a three-parter. And Sean, I don't know if you're watching the chat, but Paul Harrington has joined us and offered up some really great information about sort of space
Yeah,
requirements. It's going
yeah,
to be a little bit different for every state and sort of dependent on your health
right. So I
department.
don't know whether we can include Paul on this. He could be. Can we have? Is there any way we can
Let me see what I can do here. But
so
if you want to speak a little to just like
yeah,
how
so I'll
much
cover it
space
while
we're
you're thinking
currently
about that.
using, what's needed.
So basically, when we were looking at facilities, I mean, we looked for uh, 2 or 3 years before we came upon the facility that we're in. It happens to be a 12,000 square foot facility. It's about zero point 0.6 acres. It happened to be used for the last 20 years as a safe place for physically abused children. It was called the Vanessa Bien Crisis Nursery after a little girl, Vanessa Bien, who was lost her life due to physical abuse in the mid 1990s. It's in the lower South Hill of Spokane, which is close to our medical centers, our hospitals, and it had a very good name in our community. Was accepted and we're in a residential neighborhood, and so we're close to bus routes and things like that. So when we came upon this, it was for sale, and will sound like ridiculous, but it was. I remember, what's after I got the tour of the place, I said, "Well, what's the price on this?" And it was $1,250,000. And I'm going, what? I mean, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I thought it was going to be like 3 million or something. And that's only $100 a square foot. It's 20 years old. It's in pretty good shape. And so anyway, and then we hired Paul Harrington as an architect who has been with us on this journey for many years, and Paul will be able to talk here in just a little bit. But I remember initially talking with some friends walking through there, and they thought that it would cost 100,000 or so to remodel this place. We got Boughton Construction involved and Paul involved, and it turned out that it was going to be about um, uh, you know, 1.8 million to 2 million to remodel the facility the way it needed to be remodeled. And so we broke it into actually 3 different phases. Or a first nursery, and then we added first nursery in 2022, our second nursery in 2023, and then we remodeled the front end of the facility just the first quarter of this year with a grant that we got. So, Paul, I don't know if you want to just jump in and talk about what we had to deal with the Department of Health and their construction review process before we could get our license.
I don't know if so. I did add him as a presenter. I'm not sure if he wants to join us online or not.
Okay, well,
But he
I
did
can,
say
I can, I can, I can cover it but I wanted to
well,
give him
he
that
did.
opportunity.
Oh, there he is. He's here.
I think it's unmuted. So yeah, it was a tremendous journey, especially at the beginning of this when they decided to purchase Maddie's place. I think my first advice was it's way too expensive, and Sean said, too late, we're buying it, we're going for it. Put his faith on the line, and it has been an amazing success. I'll be honest, I've not been able to keep in touch with Sean and Maddie's place much in the last year, so I don't know how adding those extra babies and rooms has impacted operational. So there's costs and or just how many RNs you need, staffing, all that stuff. So that's probably outside of what I can speak to. What I can speak to is each state has a health department. Um, Counties have health departments. In this case, it was a piece of legislation that was originally written for this NAS. I'm sure this has been covered in previous webinars or whatever we call these things. But the wording was wrong and incorrect, and was very difficult to find a person, the authority having jurisdiction, which is a person at the building department or mostly the health department, that understood what we were actually trying to do and the level of care. So it's somewhat of a complicated answer. It will vary by your building department and or health departments, and what your state legislatures write into policy. Basically the building code is there to protect life of people who cannot protect themselves, whether that's because they're inebriated in a bar, whether because they have disabilities, they're elderly, or in this case, they're very young and cannot, they cannot walk. And so it was a lot of negotiations with a lot of different people, a lot of different levels that ultimately made it successful. And now there is some track record that it is possible. And as long as our codes evolve as tragedies happen, and as long as we keep babies safe, I think this could be a successful model. Talking about these cohorts, and as an architect, it would be interesting to design a program or a basic floor plan for what does an 8-baby facility look like? What does a 16-baby facility look like? And look at staffing levels and come up with some guidelines so that some of these grassroots efforts might get a little more traction as far as what does it cost to open one of these? So that wouldn't necessarily be regional. That could be, an outside committee, an outside cohort that wants to talk about physical facilities. And I'd love to be a part of that. If someone, I don't make stuff up, but if people come up with needs, I can help facilitate what that might look like.
Yeah, and I think Paul, this is what a great miracle that we can just have you added to this in this conversation right now. And I think Paul is a huge resource, and we can make his contact. I mean, Paul's willingness to do this and how much pro bono or what his charges are or rates. He's very, very super reasonable. He's very creative. He's got a wonderful heart for this mission, but he might be able to help, steer you. And again, it's going to go back to your county code and your building code and your state Department of Health and that. But I got to believe that, there's a lot of similarities from state to state. And so I think, Paul, we can get Paul's contact information, Katie, up on the web, webinar, so people can see that and can reach out to Paul if they have any further questions.
And I would also say, people are probably looking at the screen going, why did you put up this slide? I was sharing some of what we are trying to change with the RCWs and how, at a very high level, we're looking to change, that parents are actually allowed to stay here and make that law.
Yeah. So just put that back up if you would. Before, I want to cover that, but one thing I want to say just while my train of thought is going with Paul here, and I think, and I didn't know anything about this. Paul will know, I need to hire somebody to change a light bulb. So as construction and all this stuff, I didn't know anything about it. So that should be encouraging to you also if you don't know anything about it, because there are people like Paul around, and Paul's around too, so to help you navigate this. But in our state, and I would bet that you've got similarities in other states, the Department of Health, which oversees facilities like ours, and I think would probably be involved in your facilities around the country, has sort of two areas that we had to deal with. And one was construction review. So everything that we did, as far as all of our plans and everything, had to be approved by the Department of Health before we could commence construction. And then once construction was started, they actually would come in, and we had to have periodic checks and audits to see if our fire resistant paint was so many millimeters thick. And I mean, and then at the end, we had to do, I think it ended up being a virtual tour, Paul, with the Department of Health's construction review people to make sure that, yes, that socket went in that room in that location. Yes, this is how you're going to handle oxygen. Yes, this is where that window is. I mean, they were involved in everything. And then while that's going on, we had to come up with policies and procedures, which had never been done because the pediatric transitional care facility that was done in this state, in which the language is in front of you, the unamended part of that language, they were grandfathered in. So they didn't have to deal with any of this. So we had to come up with the policies and procedures. We've got all those. So you have a template for those. yeah, there'll be some changes and this and that and staffing ratios and change the names of the clinical director to director of nursing or whatever. But we've got a lot of that policies and procedures done. I will say that if you are dealing with the lowest level, which we initially started to, you will get nowhere because they don't like risk. They don't understand these things. And so, one of the things we finally did is we got to the top of the decision making chain, a guy named John Williams, who was the boss of the boss of the boss of the first person we were dealing with. And he was really wonderful. And I don't know, I haven't talked with John for a long time, but he is on a national board that oversees construction review for the departments of health for all the country. So one of the things that I'm just thinking about as we're doing this is to get a hold of John, tell him, bring him up to date, bring Paul up to date, because I think John Williams of the Department of Health of the state of Washington, would be a huge resource for your construction review process with your departments of health in your individual states, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I know when I would talk with him about, hey, this could be a lot bigger deal, he was very interested in that. So now's the time to get back to him. But what I wanted to, with what Katie put up, our statute, which is Revised Code of Washington 71.12, and this particular section, 0.680, it has the requirements for, okay, if you're going to be a pediatric transitional care facility, these are the requirements. And the main requirements are infants who've been substance exposed, who are no more than 1 year of age. You see that we're changing some of the requirements. One of the requirements was that they would require 24-hour continuous residential care. Well, there's a big misconception in the medical community as to when medical necessity ends and begins. And we are tired in this state of arguing with folks about medical necessity. So we're just want to change it to they would benefit from 24-hour continuous residential care. With the dyad, you have basically a therapeutic environment that goes far beyond the first or the fourth trimester, the first 3 months of life. And so it's not a cutoff. Okay, you're discharged from the hospital. We've quit giving you morphine in the NIC unit, and now you're out on your own. So it's changing that, but it's also adding a new section F, which is these facilities are capable of providing room and board and wraparound services to one or both of the parents of the infants. Right now, we are operating, I guess, illegally, because we're not even supposed to have the moms here. There's nothing in the RCW that really allows us to do that, or in the WACs. We're allowed to have the biological parents visit, and we've kind of stretched that to 24/7 visitation, and then we kind of stretched it to there's beds in the rooms, and but we need to have this clarified that it's a dyadic model. So that bill is being written this week. We're supposed to have a copy of it next week. So anyway.
Thank you, Sean. I think just to answer the rest of Claire's question, just to make sure we put a bow on it, I don't know if you mentioned we're operating out of about 12,000 square feet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Our operating budget is just over 4 million, about 4.12 million, 4.13 million a year. As we
That's
expand,
correct.
probably closer to 4.5.
Yep.
And then how are people eligible or referred for services? We have covered that in previous webinars, and I'm happy to share that with you, Claire. But it's a simple phone call. It could be the parent themselves looking for support. It could be a social worker in the hospitals, yeah, a nurse, anybody that if that parent has been discharged from the hospital and is out in the community. It could be a social worker, a counselor, anybody that's connected with them can just pick up the phone.
DCYF is a huge referral source. So our Department of Children, Youth, and Families loves us. And so that's a huge referral source. The hospitals are referral sources. Social workers are referral sources. And then we have about 40% of our 162 babies that we've treated are voluntary placements by the parents. So a 60% are through the court system, or through CPS, or through the Department of Children, Youth, and Families.
Yep. There was a specific question from Alicia. Hope you got my answer in the Q&A. Just wondering if there was anybody in Georgia. We don't yet have anybody there. But if you have been part of these and haven't yet been connected with a cohort, it's likely because, I'm going to flip back here, because there hasn't been anybody there. You may be the only one that's expressed interest. This lone person up here in South Dakota is in a different color because I haven't been able to connect them. There's nobody really in that region. But if you're in Georgia, there's a lot of the interest in Tennessee, and obviously we could connect you with the group out of Alabama. So
well, Florida, Florida's.
Yes, Florida as well. Yep. So if there's it doesn't necessarily have to be in your state. We were just trying to get as close to your region as possible. So if that's something you're interested in, just email us at info@maddysplace.org and let us know you'd like to be connected, at least with the closest, or somebody roundabout there. So Sean, it looks like Claire out of New York, she's a fellow, has a connection with Senator Gustavo Rivera, and he's the chair of the Health Committee. He's got some bills he's interested in collaborating with our team on. So I shared our contact information. We are excited to reach out and connect with you, Claire. Let me just scan here. Larry, I saw your hand come up. I was just getting to you. Larry says he's on the board of Jacob's Hope. After being the initial executive director, they remodeled an ophthalmologist office, and the Arizona Department of Health, I think is what that stands for, helped us a lot. However, the city had more extensive requirements for 24/7 care, one of them being the fire sprinkler requirements that created huge cost and schedule impacts as they had to go back and retrofit. And Sean, we've had nightmares about the firewalls and things that we had to negotiate. And so he was just saying that they had some construction companies donate time and materials, which we did as well. We benefited a lot from those amazing folks.
So, I might just say, while you're waiting on the next one, our and I'm sure you all have construction companies that are really wonderful and generous this way, but Boughton Construction, based here in Spokane, I mean, their company and and some of the individuals with Boughton gave us hundreds of thousands of dollars in individual donations and corporate donations. They lined up subs and Paul will remember this, a cabinet maker in a small town 60, 70 miles north of Spokane that donated between our two nurseries $125,000 of cabinetry. And so while we paid $1.8 million for our two nurseries and for remodeling the facility, and then it gives an additional $200,000 for the front end. So we've got about $2 million that we've done for remodeling. We've probably gotten seriously at least $3 million of value between what the subs did for free, what we got from the subs and the general contractor, and that. So you'll find that people really love this mission, and you'll be getting a great deal. That was our experience, at least.
Let me hop over here and see if there's anything else. I'm not seeing anything else in Q&A or in the chat. So we might be wrapping up a little bit early, but if anybody else has questions, feel free to type them in the chat, raise your hand, anything like that. We would be happy to answer them. And if not, we can go ahead and just wrap up a little bit early today.
So for the takeaways, I think getting Paul's information out there, I think would be good for everyone in case they want to make a contact there. Also, we'll keep this group informed of the legislation of the Miracle Act and also what happens with our state legislature and our bill. We're happy to get that posted to you or get that out. Please, if you have met as a cohort, if you could get just a short, doesn't have to be War and Peace, but just a short summary of of what happened at your meeting and that people are excited, they want to try to do this. There's no big timing on the fork in the road, but whether folks want to do this independently or whether they are interested in exploring being part of Maddie's Place umbrella. That's something that we'd like to know, and so we can help along those lines sooner if we know that. And then also we will be getting out the information that we get from coordinated care shortly after we get it to the groups in those 5 states in Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Illinois. And if anyone wants to see our templates that we're using for our operating agreement and our intercompany agreement, I don't think that's proprietary or anything either, but we're happy to show folks how we're going to do this. So anyway, really appreciate everybody being part of this. It's really, Paul, we didn't know this when we started this a few years ago, did we? That this thing could go into this. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and it's really fun to watch. And so, anyway, Paul, your observation.
I saw someone post about the facility, Jacob's Hope in Arizona, and the challenges with the city. So I'm not quite as young as Sean, but I've been around a while. And my career does go back to before 2000, but when the sprinklers really became predominant in buildings. I've had many successes in negotiating with cities, fire officials to make things work. And so if any of you are already working with a local architect, that's fantastic. I would be glad to share some perspective with anyone you're working with. If there's a challenge, having a conversation with a building official, whatever, there's just some nuances about what we do to keep people safe that some people just don't understand. And I've been faced with some unique challenges, including Maddie's Place. And so that's been a good learning experience. And there's always a way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think persistence is probably one of the greatest virtues that you can have if you want to do this. I think you have to have a good measure of passion around the subject matter, and you have to not be thrown off if you hear no a lot, and you just have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think history is going to look back, and when it looks at how we treat these infants, and I think as coordinated care told us, they think that we're on the right side of history. That's a quote from their leadership. So we think there's a better way to treat these parents and these infants, and we think we're onto something. I don't know if you can allow Lynette Serlo to possibly speak. Lynette is founded Generation O and has got her own incredibly amazing organization going. I don't know if there's any way that we can allow her to talk we got just a couple of minutes, but I'm excited that she's willing to help us in Florida. And she's got a national thing going too. So.
Well, she just posted something really kind in the chat. Thank you, Lynette. And I have made you a presenter. So if you feel comfortable and want to join in the conversation, please.
Can you hear me?
We can.
We can.
Oh, hi. You guys are so awesome. Thank you. This has just been so wonderful to be a part of. We met you guys, I don't know, maybe like a year and a half ago. And so much has happened in your lives and Maddie's Place lives and Generation O lives. And to be on the path together is so rewarding. I wanted to tell you that we are currently talking with 2 different universities about studying these children long term. So within another year or so, we're going to have even more reasons to show how important these first days of their lives are in keeping the parents with the babies, but just showing we're going to be able to show all the things that happen to these kids later in life, so that we can get them into early intervention and get them the help that they need. So yeah, this is quite an interesting world to be in, and I'm glad we're in it together.
Well, Lynette, I happened to see something that you posted, I think on LinkedIn. You were talking or responding to somebody here recently. talking about, don't quote me on this, but I think it was, oftentimes infants that have been exposed through about 18 months look pretty typical, and then, or can, and then after that, we're maybe starting to see some challenges and that kind of thing. Did I have that right?
Yeah, it's sometimes it takes even up to 3 or 4 years. But I think part of the problem was that the initial studies that came out 20 years ago, they were only studying the kids up to the first 24 months. And, they do look like their peers for the most part at that early time. But put them into preschool, put them into elementary school, have the demands of life start adding up, and they really struggle. They really struggle to handle it. But my personal experience, for those that don't know me, I've raised two of these kids. One's currently 5 and the other is 16. And the 16-year-old didn't get any early intervention services, and the 5-year-old did, and he's really on a different trajectory in life. There's still many things we can do for both of them, and they're amazing kids. But just the difference in my own home between early intervention and no early intervention is so striking.
And Lynette, maybe you can tell folks where you are. You're in Florida, and just a little bit about Generation O. And then I know we've got a link there for people to follow that to get more information and education. But tell a little bit, just where you're located, and just a brief thing about your starting Generation O.
Sure. Yeah. I'm in South Florida, and I started Generation O as a national organization because my area of the country is not as hard hit as Spokane and as some of these other areas. And so my heart is just in helping these parents who are raising these kids just understand them. We have a group on Facebook that is almost 8,000 now, and it's caregivers, primarily moms from around the country. We actually even have several English-speaking international countries that participate in our group, UK and Australia and things. But we're a group of adoptive, foster, kinship moms. We do have some biological moms, but just the people who happen to come to the group tend not to be the biological moms. All are welcome. And we're really the only place, we're the largest collection of caregivers anywhere in the world, and we're really the only place that people can go and get information on what to do and how to help these kids and what we're seeing in these kids and what are common long-term consequences. I say another 10 years from now, and a lot of this will be available anywhere, but right now it's not. So generationo.org is our website, and that's kind of where you can one-stop shop to get anything from. We're happy to, help any of the moms once they come through your to-be facilities one day. After discharge, then, we'd like to help them, guide them through the rest of their years with their child.
And I can see where, Lynette, a lot more of the biological moms are going to want to be part of your organization too. So yeah, I could see that. And then also, I do want to definitely make sure that we're collaborating with you on what we do back in DC also this next couple months.
Yeah, I really do need to have another conversation with Julianne and Florida, because I've made some pretty good relationships with Florida and Florida policy kind of stuff. It really wasn't where I planned to go, but I'm here and, it's there. So I'd like to be able to help her. But yeah, I'm definitely interested to go to Washington with you. And, this is going to be a journey.
Yeah, no, I agree. You're going to play, I'm sure, a significant role in all that this is happening, what's happening. You really are. And I wanted to also, and I don't want to, Katie, I don't know, if there's other questions, I want to address those. But I also know that two of our valued cohort members in Oregon are on. Julie Davis, who I think now is in Missouri, but she's moving back to the Portland area to be closer to family, and her daughter Heather Perry. of Roseburg, Oregon, is on the line also. And they're both NIC unit RNs, tons of experience with these infants, and have a huge passion for this. And I just love to hear. I had the privilege of meeting them in Portland a little over a month ago, and Julie actually flew out from Kansas City for the meetings, and so which I was humbled by. But I'd love to hear them give their thoughts on what they want to see in Oregon and the progress that we're making.
You know what? I think this is such a small group now that's on here. I think I just enabled mics for everyone. And if you want to turn your camera on, you are able to. We just had those settings sort of locked down when we had 120 people on here to begin with.
Yeah. So Heather and or Julie, if either one of you are still with us, if you'd like to say just a couple things about your thoughts and what we're doing and what's happened so far in Oregon.
Hey, it's Julie. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, Julie.
Oh, yeah. Hi, guys. I'm so thrilled to be here. Yeah, absolutely. Super encouraged about all of the things that have been going on. Um, Lynette, really inspiring. I also was a foster parent of the medically fragile baby. I had I had a medical home in my home in Oregon for a few years that I took in the babies that were drug affected. And fortunately, a few of the moms I got to help. But yeah, I am incredibly stoked to be a part of this. I mean, this is like my lifelong dream. And yeah, I'm currently a NICU nurse, and I have seen the struggles that these moms go through trying to connect with their babies. And it's just like, wow, I can actually be a part of this. I'm uber thrilled. I need you guys to all be praying for me though, to get my ducks in a row before to get back out there. I'm just really excited about it, and I'm going to make it happen.
And she's moving with, how many horses do you have in Missouri?
I have three. I have 3 horses, 9 cats, and 5 dogs now. So you guys need to really be helping, really be praying for me, because I got to make some major decisions and I got to find some housing.
So we're looking forward to having Julie be one of our lead nurses down in the new Vancouver facility. And then Heather, I don't know if you'd like to jump on. I know I'm putting you on the spotlight, but if you could unmute, I'd love to hear from you.
I see Heather typing, so if she doesn't have the chance to unmute, she might have a message for us.
Maybe you can read, Katie, what...
Yeah. She's going to type us a message. While she's doing that, Lynette, I just spoke with our team. Oh, she has laryngitis at the moment, so she won't be talking to us. We're just going to wish you well, Heather.
She did have a sick day. I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I should say anything, but yeah, she had a sick day today.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're wishing you well. Well, Lynette, I was chatting with our team. I got an email. I think it was either early this week or late last week. I'm on Geno's mailing list. If you guys aren't, please consider joining that. It is a wealth of information. But you have something in there, the Thrive program or Thrive Points. Is that only for folks in your area down in Florida, or is that for anybody that might want to be connected? Oh, Lynette jumped off. Okay. Well, I would say hop on her website, generationo.org. There's so much information. They're looking not just nationally but internationally for the latest data and real concrete supports for parents, so or caregivers of any kind. So
I was wondering, I don't see as I scroll through, at least to the chat list, I don't know if anyone from the Birmingham, Alabama cohort is still with us. If they are, I'd love to hear from them. It's a real powerhouse group with NIC unit nurses, lawyer, fundraising. Dee Dee is her first name, has worked on the Hill in DC, and so they've got all sorts of political connections that we're working with her to see if we can have her come back to DC when we go back there too. So Be great if Lynette can join us from Florida, and we can get Dee Dee from Birmingham, and see what happens with the other clinics too, with Jacob's Hope and others too. So I think getting this data for the entire country is going to benefit all of us together. This is it's going to, I think, open the door for a lot more of these clinics. It's a long race. It's going to take a while, but we got to get the data. So.
Great. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it for today, unless anybody's got one last minute question. So speak now. Oh, Lanisha, you have a question. Yes, feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lanisha. I'm in Maryland, so there's not very many of us here. I think there's only one other person in Maryland in our cohort. But I did want to mention that the Thrive program is in a number of jurisdictions. So I can't say that everyone's jurisdiction is represented with the Thrive program, but I know we do have the Thrive program in Baltimore, Maryland. I actually work for the health department, so I'm teetering on how much I can do while still in my current role, and when it will be time for me to step away from my role, because the waters will get muddy. So I'm really looking for some folks to work with me here in Maryland. Like I said, working for the health department, it could get the lines can be blurred for me. So I'm looking to expand the cohort here in Maryland, and I've been speaking with some of my colleagues at Hopkins. I've actually spoken with the researcher who did the article for you guys.
Well, so I had to jump in on, so what is your name again?
Lanisha Childs.
Okay, so I just spent an hour with Dr. Michael Fingerhood at Johns Hopkins yesterday. And
awesome.
yeah, and John and Michael is the chief addiction. He's the chief of addiction medicine at Johns Hopkins. He's been working on the dyad issues since 1993. He's got published work. He's got all sorts of stuff, and he also, the article that we have followed with this dyadic model was authored by Lauren Jansen and Martha Velez. And this is the non-pharmacological treatment methodology that we're kind of basing our model on. He knows them both very well, works with them. And so I think that even though you're alone or there's just a few people, I think we are going to be working with Johns Hopkins on this. Johns Hopkins has really been a center of excellence and research. And interestingly enough, our new director of the Healthcare Authority, Ryan Moran, just got his doctorate at Johns Hopkins, and his his doctoral thesis was on peer recovery and the success that they're seeing, in this area with peer support and recovery. And that's what we're seeing of the 95 moms we've had 162 infants that have been treated here. 95 of their moms have stayed here. Of those moms that stayed the entire time with their infant, 88% are in recovery today, and they're in custody of that infant, and they're housed. And most of them were unhoused. Most of them had never had custody of any of their infants, and they were deeply lost in their addiction, 3/4 to fentanyl. So that's what's really attracting a lot of attention. And he and I were talking about all these statistics and everything. And so the other thing that you should do is, Katie, if we can put up the link from Deborah Vinnick and from The Silence Must Be Broken, Women Lost in the Opioid Crisis. This was a 2-hour documentary that was on ABC a couple years ago, and it's on PBS now. You can stream it live on PBS. And we will send you the link that we're in, but also Michael of Johns Hopkins is heavily interviewed through that piece, as is Dr. Marvin Seppala, who is kind of leading our group in Oregon. So I encourage you to watch that. Maddie's Place shows up at about the 42nd minute for 5 minutes. This was on ABC. It was been on PBS, and you can stream it. So In addition to the Guardian article, we've gotten a lot of TV coverage too. But Johns Hopkins, I think the fact that you're back in Baltimore is a big deal. So,
Yeah,
and actually
I've
one
actually
of the
reached
women
out
that they
to.
one of the women they focus on, Rebecca is her name. One of her stories is really, really powerful, and it was working with Michael and with Johns Hopkins. So
I've spoken with Dr. Velez and we've been in touch and had a few conversation, and I'd be happy to reach out to
that would be
Michael.
great. I've reached out to both Dr. Velez and Dr. Jansen, and now Michael Fingerhood is his name. Funny last name. But anyway, we're got back and forth going with Johns Hopkins and with what we're doing here.
Okay, I'd love to hear more about that. So I'll definitely be
Okay.
in touch and reach out through the email address.
Okay, that sounds really good. I just also on the research side, since Lynette mentioned that, we have filed a joint grant application with Washington State University's medical school for an NIH grant to do a longitudinal study on 250 infants with 125 infants that have been exposed to fentanyl, and then a control group with same social, economic trauma factors that have not been exposed to fentanyl. So we're waiting to hear from NIH on that any day. And then also, we just had a PhD sociologist faculty member from the University of San Francisco that wants to do a research project on our parents and on our peer support program and what's happening. So I think, one of the things that well, it's difficult to get this population in a stable setting where you can have research done. And so I think we're going to be a source of a fair amount of research, and other clinics around the country are going to be sources of research. Ohio State University has also done a study of Bridget's Path in Dayton, Ohio. And so we've got the WSU study of us, we've got Ohio State of Bridget's Path, and we've got more research projects that we're being asked about to participate in.
Oh my goodness. Well, you guys, I think that is our time. It's been a really phenomenal conversation today. I'm sad to see the series end, but if we get more information or, see the need to connect, we will be glad to do that. So
Yeah, we'll probably be doing another one the more I look at
yeah,
this.
I could see that. Just want to thank you all so much for joining us, really not just today, but throughout this entire series. When we opened Maddie's Place in October of 2022, I know that we hoped we could show that infants experiencing withdrawal and, families navigating recovery really deserved more than the current systems that were available to them. And when we launched this webinar series this summer, we hoped maybe a few communities might learn how to build similar programs. And what we've are experiencing today is really just so much more. We've got a national movement with leaders emerging across the country, a future where really healing-centered care becomes the norm, not just the exception. And obviously a big growing network of people who believe that babies deserve better and are willing to make that happen. So please stay connected with us, keep meeting with your cohorts, and reach out to us anytime you have a question or need support of any kind. Together we can and will create more healing places and spaces for these babies and families across the country. So thank you all again.
Well said, Katie. And I just want
Yep.
to thank you all too. I mean, this has been such an encouragement to me personally, and I think to Katie and to our team that there's so much interest out there. And, I think all of us in our lives want to have an impact, right? I mean, that's one of the main things you can do. And we're seeing an opportunity to do that because of you. And so, we all need to work on this together. We're here to try to help as we can. And we're just really appreciate all of your involvement in this and taking the time. So let's see where this goes from here. We'll be keeping in touch, and I hope you all have a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll be keeping in touch with all of you. So good evening.
Be well.